I stared in shock as flames consumed my wedding gown. The delicate lace and silk that had taken months to perfect now a blackened, smoldering heap on the floor. The scent of burning fabric filled the bridal suite of the Bellevue Hotel, mixing with the fresh flowers and expensive perfume that once made the space feel magical. Standing before me, still clutching a lighter in her manicured hand, was Evelyn Montgomery, my soon-to-be mother-in-law. Her emerald dress was impeccable, her expression triumphant. "Now you can't marry my son," she declared, her voice trembling with hysteria. "Nathan deserves someone from our world, not some nobody who clawed her way up from nothing." She tossed her designer clutch over her shoulder, looking immensely pleased with herself. "My name is Lily Carter, and at 27, I never thought I'd be watching my wedding dress burn 30 minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle." My 3 bridesmaids stood frozen, their pale blue dresses stark against the ruined gown at my feet. I inhaled slowly, steadying my voice. "Mrs. Montgomery, you have no idea what you just did." She laughed, sharp and brittle. "What I did? I saved my son from the biggest mistake of his life. You think a scholarship and a marketing job make you good enough for a Montgomery? Nathan belongs with Charlotte Kensington. Her family owns half of the city." I pressed a button on my phone, never breaking eye contact. Evelyn's smirk faltered. Behind me, my bridesmaid Sarah moved to crack a window, trying to clear the smoke. "The wedding's off," Evelyn continued, waving a dismissive hand. "I'll tell everyone you got cold feet. Nathan will be upset for a while, but he'll understand eventually." "Are you sure about that?" I asked, turning my phone screen toward her. Her eyes flickered to the screen. The color drained from her face. On display was a live feed of the wedding venue, the elegant rows of white chairs, the floral arch at the altar, and the massive projection screen that now showed this very room. The guests, the officiant, Nathan's father, and most importantly, Nathan himself, all had just witnessed Evelyn in her full, destructive glory. The blood drained from her face. What is that?" "The wedding live stream," I said evenly. "For Nathan's grandparents in London. For my brother, who's deployed overseas. It's been running for the last 20 minutes. Capturing everything." I tilted my head. "Including you burning my wedding dress and announcing exactly what you think of me." Evelyn lunged for my phone, her perfect composure unraveling. "You set me up," she shrieked. My bridesmaid, Olivia, stepped smoothly between us. "Mrs. Montgomery," she said calmly, "everyone just watched you commit arson. You might want to think about your next move." My phone buzzed relentlessly with incoming messages. Sarah glanced at the screen and gasped. "Lily, it's Nathan. He's coming up here. Now." Evelyn's panic was immediate. Her gaze darted around the room like a caged animal. "This isn't what it looks like," she stammered. I was just testing the fabric. Wedding dresses should be flame-resistant." From the phone speaker, we could hear the murmuring of the guests. The live stream angle had shifted. Someone had taken control of the camera, showing the wedding party's reactions. Nathan's father sat stone-faced in the front row. The best man had already bolted toward the building. But most telling was Nathan himself, no longer waiting patiently at the altar, but sprinting up the aisle, his expression a storm of fury and disbelief. "Lily," my bridesmaid Claire whispered urgently, "should we tell everyone to go home?" I looked down at the charred remains of my dream dress, a pile of ashes on the antique hardwood floor. My mind was whirling, but beneath the shock, something stronger surfaced, clarity. I straightened my shoulders. "No," I said firmly. "We're not calling anything off. We're just making a few changes." The door to the suite burst open. Nathan stood there, breathless, eyes locking onto me before flicking to his mother. "Mom," he said, voice dangerously low. "What did you do?" Evelyn opened her mouth, but for the first time in her life, she had no words. Nathan turned back to me. "Lily, are you okay?" I met his gaze, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I smiled. "Nathan," I said, stepping toward him, "how do you feel about a wedding without a gown?" His lips parted in surprise, then curved into a slow, knowing grin. "As long as you're there, I don't care what you wear." I turned to my bridesmaids. "Sarah, find me a white dress." "Anything." Claire nodded, already pulling out her phone. On it. Olivia smirked at Evelyn. I think it's time for the mother of the groom to take her seat, if she's still invited. Evelyn let out a strangled noise, but she was out of moves. Nathan took my hand, his grip warm and steady. Let's go get married. And just like that, we walked out of the room, toward the life we chose, no matter what anyone else thought. The part of me that had put myself through college while juggling 2 jobs was already calculating the next steps. No, I said firmly. The ceremony is happening, just differently. The door to the bridal suite burst open. Nathan stood there, still in his tuxedo, his sharp eyes darting from my face to his mother, then to the ruined remains of my wedding dress on the floor. Behind him, the venue manager and his father appeared, both looking horrified. His mother, Evelyn, stepped back slightly, her poise faltering. Mom, Nathan said, his voice dangerously quiet, tell me I didn't just watch you burn Lily's wedding dress while saying she isn't good enough for our family. Evelyn's demeanor shifted in an instant. Her voice took on a saccharine edge. Sweetheart, you don't understand. I was protecting you. This girl has been after your money from day one. I was. Stop. Nathan cut her off, his jaw tight with anger. Stop lying. I heard everything. He turned to me, his expression softening. Lily, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she would do something like this. I stepped carefully around the burnt fabric and moved toward him. It's just a dress, I said, even though we both knew it was much more than that. But your mother just showed exactly what she thinks of me, of us, in front of everyone we know. Nathan took my hands in his, completely ignoring Evelyn's sputtering protests. What do you want to do, Lily? He asked. It's your call. Before I could respond, Richard Montgomery, Nathan's father, stepped up beside his son, his face etched with barely contained anger. Evelyn, he said, his voice dangerously controlled. What have you done? Evelyn's confidence wavered for the first time. Richard, please, she pleaded. You know Charlotte Kensington would be a much better match. Their family has been part of the city's elite for generations, unlike Lily, Richard interrupted, shaking his head in disgust. Who worked hard, built her own career, and has never relied on a trust fund to get by. You've gone too far this time. My phone continued to vibrate with notifications. I glanced down to see an overwhelming flood of messages from guests who had watched everything unfold on the live stream. The venue coordinator hovered in the doorway, looking uneasy. Miss Carter, she said hesitantly, the guests are asking what's happening. Should we make an announcement? I looked at the ruins of my dress, then at my bridesmaids in their light blue gowns. A plan was already forming in my mind, one that would turn Evelyn's sabotage into something entirely different. Tell them there's been a change of plans, I said. But the ceremony will proceed in 20 minutes. Evelyn scoffed. In what? Your underwear? You can't possibly. In my backup dress, I interrupted calmly. The room went silent. Nathan looked at me, confused. You have a backup dress? I didn't. Of course I didn't. But 6 months of handling crisis clients in advertising had taught me that confidence was everything. Sarah, I turned to my bridesmaid. Remember that bridal shoot we did last month for Seattle Bride magazine? Her eyes widened in realization. The ivory sheath with the lace overlay? Exactly. I nodded. Call Eliza and ask if the sample dress is still available. Richard stepped forward, already pulling out his phone. I'll have my driver pick it up immediately. Where is it located? As they coordinated the dress retrieval, I turned back to Evelyn. She stood frozen, her disbelief clear as her carefully laid plan unraveled before her eyes. You really thought a dress would stop this wedding? I asked, my voice even. After everything Nathan and I have been through? Evelyn's lips thinned. But everyone saw, she hissed, gesturing toward my phone. They all saw what happened. Yes, I agreed. They did. I turned the phone so she could see the live stream comments flooding in, not with sympathy for her, but with overwhelming support for me. She had exposed herself. And now the world was watching. And now, I continued, meeting her furious gaze, they'll see what happens next. With that, I turned toward the camera, straightened my shoulders, and addressed everyone waiting downstairs. To all of our guests, I said, we've had an unexpected change of wardrobe. But I can promise you this, the wedding is still happening. Because love isn't about a dress. It's about two people who refuse to let anything or anyone stand in their way. The response was immediate. A roar of cheers echoed from the ballroom below. I turned back to Nathan, my heart hammering in my chest. Let's do this, I said. And with his unwavering hand in mine, we walked out of the room, toward the life we chose together. To everyone waiting, I said, knowing the guests were still watching. Thank you for your patience. The ceremony will be slightly delayed, but love always finds a way, even when someone tries to burn it down. A cheer erupted from my phone speakers as the guests in the ceremony space voiced their overwhelming support. The outpouring of love sent a wave of warmth through me, steadying my nerves. Nathan squeezed my hand, pride evident in his eyes. Then, he turned toward his mother. Mom, he said firmly, his voice unwavering, you need to leave. Dad will take you home. You are no longer welcome at our wedding. Evelyn's face twisted with rage. You would choose her over your own mother? After everything I've done for you. Nathan didn't hesitate. After what you've done today. Absolutely. The next 20 minutes passed in a whirlwind of activity. Evelyn was escorted out by security after Richard, his face lined with disappointment, insisted on it. Meanwhile, Eliza from Seattle Bride magazine arrived, bringing not one but 3 sample dresses. The bridal suite transformed into an impromptu fashion headquarters with my bridesmaids, the venue coordinator, and even a few female guests volunteering to help. This one, Sarah declared, holding up an elegant ivory-sheath dress with delicate lace detailing. It's perfect for your figure, and we can have it ready in minutes. The venue seamstress, originally hired for last-minute alterations, worked miracles, pinning and stitching with speed and precision. Meanwhile, Nathan had returned to the ceremony space to address the guests in person. Through the live stream, now thoughtfully positioned toward the altar, I could hear him speaking. Today didn't start the way any of us expected, he said, his voice steady despite everything. But Lily and I have always believed that it's not the perfect circumstances that make a marriage work. It's how you handle the imperfect ones together. A round of applause erupted. I smiled as Claire adjusted the borrowed veil on my head. There, she said, stepping back to admire her work. You look absolutely stunning. The dress wasn't what I had planned to wear when I became Mrs. Nathan Montgomery, but as I stared at my reflection, I realized it suited me perfectly. It was simpler, more elegant, and somehow stronger than my original choice, like me, adapting to circumstances rather than being defeated by them. A knock at the door drew my attention. Richard stepped inside, his expression softening when he saw me. Lily, you look beautiful. He hesitated, his eyes filled with something that almost looked like regret. He sighed. I want to apologize for Evelyn. Her behavior was inexcusable. You don't need to apologize for her, Mr. Montgomery, I replied gently. You didn't burn my dress. He nodded, looking almost grateful. Nathan sent me to tell you that everyone's ready, whenever you are. Then, he added with a small smile, your boss from the agency is here. Apparently, he's documenting everything for what he calls the greatest viral wedding marketing campaign Seattle has ever seen. I laughed. Trust Eddie to see a promotional opportunity in disaster. The advertising world had taught me that sometimes, the most compelling stories come from overcoming the unexpected. The venue coordinator appeared at the door. We're ready when you are, Miss Carter. The musicians are prepared, and we've adjusted the lighting to complement your new dress. Wait, I said as an idea formed. The live stream is still running, right? She nodded. Can we project it in the ceremony space for a few more minutes? I want everyone to see us walking from here to there, the whole journey, not just the arrival. She smiled. Absolutely. 10 minutes later, my bridesmaids and I made our way through the venue's garden path. The soft hum of music from the ceremony space grew louder with each step. The Seattle skyline framed the horizon, bathed in the golden hues of the setting sun. And the world watched not just our wedding, but our story. A story of love. A story of resilience. A story that no fire could destroy. As we stepped onto the garden path leading to the ceremony space, I knew that every step was being broadcast to the waiting guests. This wasn't a traditional bridal entrance, but something far more powerful, a statement. Nothing, not a vindictive mother-in-law with a lighter, not sabotage, not even the unexpected, could stop this wedding. The sound of applause grew louder as we neared the grand doors leading into the ceremony space. Inside, Nathan waited, his expression lighting up when he saw me. He held out his hand. "Ready to get married?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "More ready than ever," I replied, squeezing his fingers. The ceremony that followed wasn't the one we had rehearsed, but it was better. It was authentic, unscripted, real. As I walked down the aisle in my borrowed dress, guests rose to their feet, not in silence, but in a thunderous standing ovation. Their faces reflected not just joy, but respect, admiration, solidarity. At the front, Richard Montgomery stood proudly, his expression unreadable as he occasionally glanced at the empty seat where Evelyn should have been. When his eyes met mine, there was a silent acknowledgement, a wordless gesture of support. Our officiant, Pastor Reynolds, no relation, though we had joked about it, took a deep breath, smiling at the gathered guests. "Dearly beloved," he began, his voice warm and steady, "we are gathered here today to witness not just a wedding, but a triumph. A triumph of love over adversity. Nathan and Lily have already faced their first challenge as a couple, and they have met it with grace, resilience, and unwavering commitment to each other." The emotion in the room was palpable. When it came time for our vows, Nathan added a line that hadn't been in our rehearsal. "I promise to stand by you," he said, his voice carrying to the back of the room and beyond, to those watching the live stream. "Against anyone who tries to come between us, even if, especially if, that person is from my own family." A few muffled gasps were heard, but overwhelmingly there were nods, tears, support. When it was time to exchange rings, a flicker of panic crossed Nathan's face. His mother had been in charge of them. Before I could react, Richard stepped forward, his expression unreadable as he produced a familiar velvet box from his pocket. "I took the liberty of retrieving these earlier," he said quietly, handing them over. "Just in case." Nathan exhaled, visibly relieved. Moments later, when we were pronounced husband and wife, the cheer that erupted was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't just the usual celebration. It was a release of all the tension, all the uncertainty, all the chaos that had preceded this moment. As we walked back down the aisle, I spotted Eddie, my boss from the agency, filming discreetly from the side. He gave me a thumbs up, an expression that was somehow both professional and deeply emotional. The reception that followed in the Bellevue Ballroom had an atmosphere unlike any wedding I'd ever attended. Instead of polite conversation and standard rituals, there was an energy, a festive defiance. Someone had hastily created a custom Snapchat filter featuring a phoenix rising from the ashes with our names underneath. "Your wedding is trending locally on social media," Sarah informed me as we entered the reception. "People are using hashtag rising from the ashes and hashtag Camp Burn Love." Nathan's college roommate, Tom, who worked in public relations, approached us with his phone. "The Seattle Times wants a statement," he said, grinning. Their lifestyle editor saw the live stream. Apparently, her niece was a guest, and they're calling it Seattle's most resilient wedding. Nathan smiled, keeping his arm secure around my waist. "Tell them," he said without hesitation, "that we're just grateful for everyone's support and that true commitment means facing obstacles together, not running from them." As the evening progressed, I noticed Richard deep in conversation with various family members. His gestures and expressions made it clear damage control was underway. Then, Nathan's Aunt Diane approached our table during dinner. She leaned down, speaking in a low voice. "Richard is beside himself," she confided. "Evelyn's been escorted home, but she's threatening to cut Nathan out of the family business if he doesn't come to his senses." I exchanged a glance with Nathan, but neither of us looked worried. If anything, we looked relieved. "And what did Richard say?" Nathan asked, amusement flickering in his eyes. Aunt Diane smiled knowingly. He told her that after today, she's the one who needs to come to her senses. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. No matter what happened next, I knew one thing for certain. We hadn't just survived today. We had won. She's the one who needs to worry about her position in the company. Nathan's Aunt Diane finished with a knowing smirk. Nathan squeezed my hand under the table. Dad's always been the backbone of the family, he said quietly. Mom just never realized it because he let her think she was in charge. As our first dance began, I couldn't help but notice the empty tables near the front of the room, spaces that had been reserved for Evelyn's country club friends, most of whom had quietly disappeared after the incident. In their place, colleagues from my advertising agency had moved forward, filling the void with genuine support. Richard is handling damage control like a pro, Eddie remarked, approaching us after the dance with 2 glasses of champagne. He's personally thanking everyone for staying while subtly letting Evelyn's allies know they won't be missed. Nathan nodded, watching his father work the room with newfound respect. I think this is the first time I've seen him stand up to her so publicly, he murmured. 27 years of marriage, and today was his breaking point. A soft tap on my shoulder caught my attention. The wedding photographer, initially hired by Evelyn, approached cautiously. Mrs. Montgomery, she hesitated, then smiled. The younger Mrs. Montgomery, she clarified with a grin. I've captured some beautiful moments today, but I wanted to ask about the dress incident. Some guests took photos. Would you prefer I request that they keep those private? I exchanged a glance with Nathan before answering. Actually, I think honesty is the best approach here, I said. This is part of our story now. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a notification. A short clip of Evelyn setting fire to my dress had already been viewed over 20,000 times on a local Seattle news page. I scrolled through the flood of comments, an outpouring of support mixed with stories from other brides who had faced toxic in-laws. You might not have planned it, Eddie said, reading over my shoulder, but you've started a movement. Standing strong in the face of toxic family relationships is resonating with people. Before I could respond, Nathan's cousin Mia appeared at our table. Her expression was a mix of embarrassment and determination. I want you both to know, she said firmly, that not everyone in the family shares Aunt Evelyn's views. Most of us think she crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. Thank you, Mia, I said sincerely, touched by her words. That means a lot. As the evening progressed, Nathan's phone buzzed with a message from his father. He read it silently before turning the screen toward me. Your mother has locked herself in the guest house. She's demanding I choose between her and that girl. I've informed her that her behavior today has made my choice remarkably easy. We'll discuss next steps when you return from your honeymoon. Proud of you both. Dad. I looked at Nathan, watching for any sign of regret or doubt. Are you okay? I asked softly. He met my gaze, then gave my hand a firm squeeze. I'm better than okay, he said. For years, I watched Mom undermine Dad, belittle you, and manipulate everyone around her. Today, she finally showed her true colors to everyone, not just us. It's like a weight has been lifted. I exhaled, relief washing over me. As the reception continued, something remarkable happened. The guests who had been stiff and formal at the beginning, mainly those from Evelyn's side of the family and social circle, began to relax. Without Evelyn's watchful eye, the artificial social barriers she had carefully maintained were dissolving. Laughter rang through the ballroom. Conversations that had once been polite but distant turned into genuine connections. It felt like, for the first time, Nathan's family was seeing mine not as outsiders, but as equals. Just then, the venue coordinator approached, an unexpected smile on her face. Mrs. Montgomery, she said warmly, there's something you should see. She led us to the entrance of the ballroom, where a large photo frame stood on an easel. Inside the frame were dozens of handwritten notes from guests. Above them, in elegant script, was a heading that read, Messages of love and resilience for Lily and Nathan. I covered my mouth, overwhelmed. Your bridesmaids organized this, the coordinator added. I stepped closer, scanning the messages. Some were heartfelt. Love isn't about perfection, It's about perseverance. You two are living proof of that. Some were humorous. Lily, any chance I can borrow your seamstress for my next wardrobe emergency? One, in particular, made my heart swell. We came here for a wedding. We stayed for the story. And what a story it is. Tears pricked my eyes as I turned to my bridesmaids, standing nearby. You guys, I whispered, at a loss for words. Sarah grinned. We figured you deserved something to remind you of today, not just the bad, but the good. Nathan wrapped an arm around me, pressing a kiss to my temple. I looked around the room, at our guests, our families, our friends, at the love and joy that had replaced the tension of the afternoon. And I knew, in that moment, that this wedding wasn't just a celebration of our love. It was a declaration of resilience, of strength, and of a future that no one, not even Evelyn, could take away from us. The venue coordinator smiled warmly as she explained. They asked guests to write messages of support after what happened. I traced my fingers over the handwritten notes, overwhelmed by the genuine kindness of the people who had stood by us. 1 week into our honeymoon in the Maldives, the full impact of what had happened at our wedding was still unfolding. Nathan and I sat on our private deck, overlooking crystal blue waters, our toes dipped in the infinity pool as we scrolled through messages on our phones during our daily check-in with reality. Dad says Mom is staying with her sister in Portland, Nathan said, setting his phone down. Apparently, Aunt Linda is the only person who still believes her version of events, that she was just testing the dress fabric and everyone misunderstood. I smirked, adjusting my sun hat. Hard to misunderstand someone shouting, "Now you can't marry my son," while holding a lighter. The Seattle media had picked up our story in earnest. What began as a sensational wedding disaster had evolved into a larger conversation about toxic family dynamics and standing up for healthy relationships. Several women's magazines had reached out, requesting interviews about maintaining boundaries with difficult in-laws. Eddie says the agency has received 3 new client inquiries, specifically asking for the team with the wedding dress phoenix. I laughed, showing Nathan the message. He wants to know if we'd consider being part of a panel discussion on crisis management when we get back. Nathan took my hand, his thumb brushing over my new wedding band. Only if you want to, he said. We can keep this private if you prefer. I thought about the messages we'd received from other couples facing similar challenges. Maybe our experience can help others, I said. Not the way I planned to start our marriage, but authentic, Nathan finished. Like us. 3 months after our wedding, Nathan and I attended the Montgomery Family Foundation's annual gala, our first major public appearance since returning from our honeymoon. The event, once orchestrated by Evelyn, had been completely reimagined under Richard's direction. Nervous? Nathan asked as our car pulled up to the Seattle Art Museum. A little, I admitted, smoothing my gown, a stunning emerald design from Eliza's boutique, the same designer who had turned our wedding story into a successful marketing campaign about resilience and second chances. Inside, the atmosphere was noticeably different from previous years. The usual stiff formality was gone, replaced by something warmer, more genuine. Richard greeted us at the entrance, looking years younger without Evelyn's controlling presence beside him. There they are, he beamed, embracing us both. The couple who inspired our foundation's new initiative. He guided us toward a display showcasing the Montgomery Family Foundation's newest program, Rising Phoenix Grants for women starting over after difficult life transitions. The foundation's logo had been redesigned to subtly incorporate a phoenix motif. We've already approved funding for 15 women, Richard explained proudly, each one rebuilding after challenging circumstances. I squeezed Nathan's hand, touched beyond words. As we mingled with guests, I noticed that Evelyn's absence had changed the guest list as well. Gone were many of the society climbers and status-conscious acquaintances. Instead, they had been replaced by people genuinely passionate about the foundation's work. Mrs. Montgomery? I turned to see a young woman approaching, her expression both nervous and grateful. I just wanted to say, your wedding story gave me the courage to leave my toxic marriage, she said. Now, I'm starting my own business. Emotions swelled in my chest. That's amazing, I said sincerely. I'm so happy for you. Later that evening, as Nathan and I shared a quiet moment on the museum's terrace, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression thoughtful. "Mom's coming back to Seattle," he said finally. I raised an eyebrow. "Oh." Dad says she's agreed to counseling if she wants any chance at reconciliation. I reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "Whatever happens with your parents," I said, my voice steady, "we face it together, just like we did with the wedding." Nathan exhaled, then smiled, pulling me close. "Some flames are meant to destroy," he murmured, his lips brushing against my forehead. "And some," I whispered back, "just reveal what's unbreakable." To everyone who has followed my journey, I want to say thank you. Whether you watched in real time or found our story later, your support has meant the world to me. It wasn't just about a wedding dress or a dramatic moment. It was about something bigger. It was about choosing love over fear, self-worth over validation, and building a future on our own terms. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against expectations, whether from family, society, or even your own fears? What did you do? What helped you stay strong? Leave a comment below. Your experiences matter. They don't just help me, they help others who might be struggling to find their voice right now. And if you've ever faced toxic relationships, controlling people, or unfair treatment, you are not alone. I know how easy it is to second-guess yourself, to wonder if it's selfish to put your own happiness first. But let me tell you something, it's not selfish. It's necessary. I want this to be more than just a story. I want it to be a conversation, a place where we can uplift each other, share wisdom, and remind ourselves that we are stronger than the obstacles thrown in our path. So, let's talk. What's your advice for someone learning to set boundaries? What's one lesson life has taught you about standing firm in your worth? Drop a comment, share your thoughts, and let's make this a space for strength, resilience, and real conversations. Because some flames are meant to destroy, but others just reveal what's unbreakable.